While the gas price continue to climb and the heating costs expected to increase this winter, the Biden administration is considering to shut down a second pipeline. What would be the consequences? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cathy show. We started a little bit late, but it's going to be a very important topic we are discussing right now. And also, we will talk about what's the China's role in this energy crisis. So people in California on social media currently are circulating around these pictures taken at the gas pumps. And please, our back end, please show the pictures. These pictures are taken at the gas pumps in a lot of places in California. So everyday Americans are getting hammered by higher and higher gas prices. And the prices at the pump continue to climb, with the national average for a gallon of gas hitting $3.42 today. It is 16 cents more than a month ago, and $1.31 more than years ago, and 80 cents more than in 2019. But in the states like California, the average price goes to $4.62 for the regular gas today, and it goes to almost $5 average for the premium gas. Bank of America warns the pain may just getting started, predicting that the Brent crude oil, which drives gas prices, will zoom to $120 a barrel by June 2022. That's 45% higher than the current level. And Americans are also facing sharp rise of the heating cost this winter, along with everything else. With the price surging worldwide for the heating oil, natural gas, and other fuels, the U.S. government said a month ago in October that it expects households to see their heating bill jump as much as 54% compared to last winter. While the gas prices have rise so much, and the federal government knows the trend is going, the Biden and Harris administration today reportedly began weighing the closure of a Michigan oil pipeline. It is considering a request from 12 federally recognized tribes to cancel the 78-year-old Line 5 oil pipeline. The pipeline is owned by a Canadian company named Enbridge. So if it indeed closes this Line 5, it will be the second pipeline the current administration shut down within 1 year. What would be the consequences, and what's behind the energy price surge? And especially what's China's role in there? I talked to an industry expert, Jerry Simmons, the president and the CEO of DEPA, which stands for Domestic Energy Producers Alliance. So first of all, I asked for Jerry's comments on the Biden administration's considering to shut down the second pipeline, and he replied in an email. So Jerry Simmons said shutting down Line 5's operation will likely drive up energy price in Michigan, which have already spiked 50% in 1 year, and could also cost thousands of workers their jobs. And he continued, if Line 5 is shut down, tens of thousands of jobs would be lost across Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the region. Billions of dollars in the economic activities would be in jeopardy. And he said the environment would be at greater risk due to additional truck operation on the roadway and railroads carrying those material currently being carried by Line 5. He continued saying that entering winter months and the falling temperatures in the Midwest, shutting down Line 5 would undoubtedly further exacerbate the shortages and the price increase in home heating fuels like natural gas and propane at the time when Americans are already facing rapidly rising energy prices, steep home heating costs, global supply shortages, and the skyrocketing gas prices. So I interviewed Jerry late last week. So we talked about a range of things, which I think it's really, really interesting. So first of all, I asked him to address the current energy crisis in more details, not only in the United States, basically globally, also including China, all facing energy shortage and the price surge. So according to Jerry, what's the major reason for that?
Cathy, in our opinion, the Domestic Energy Producers Alliance, what's wrong with the U.S. Oil and gas supply right now is directly related to the policies of the current Biden administration. On the first day in office, he canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He banned a temporary ban on leasing federal lands, and that includes offshore. So the big oil and gas fields in the Gulf of Mexico were put off limits. And that expired, that executive order expired, but the policies are still basically in place, and no one's able to bid on those federal leases and get permits to drill wells. So all of those policies, tighter regulations, we've been threatened with removal of some tax breaks that we get to do the business that we do. So all of that led to uncertainty in the market. And that uncertainty meant that the oil and gas producers in this country stopped drilling wells. And so the supply started to dry up. For example, in April of 2020, the WTI, West Texas Intermediate crude oil price, which is the market price established here in the U.S., closed the day at minus $38 a barrel. And it was because the speculation was that in Cushing, Oklahoma, where that price is determined, which is a huge oil storage facility, that it was full. And just this week, it was reported that the stockpiles in Cushing, Oklahoma are dangerously low. So prices are going up. The same thing is occurring across the globe right now.
So what about China then?
Working hard right now to bring in as much energy as they possibly can. They're buying crude oil. One of the things that we don't like to see, they're buying 800,000 barrels a day from the Iranian government, which again, for the rest of the Western world, we don't like that. We've got sanctions on Iranian oil to force that government to stop funding terrorists around the world. There also another article I read just recently. The Chinese government has turned up full blast all of the coal production in the country, and I believe the number of new coal plants that went online in China in 2020 was about 200 coal plants. So we're all hearing about what's going on with COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland right now. And they're talking about CO2 emissions and warming the planet and, all of these things. And the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians are not there. The Chinese communist government produces more CO2 through its policies into the atmosphere than I think the top 3 other countries on the planet. So if world leaders really and truly are concerned about climate change and what's going on and CO2, How can you have a conference like that without bringing the Chinese in? And the Russians did the same thing. They turned their nose up at the thing, and Vladimir Putin said, I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to sell as much natural gas and oil as I can, and drive the price up to the Europeans, which they're stuck. And also part of all of this global problem, when you look at Western Europe, they have gone, the Germans, the UK, they have gone from reliable sources like coal plants, natural gas plants, to wind and solar. This past summer, it's documented perfectly. The wind quit blowing in Europe, and so the UK and Germans in particular lost a significant portion of their electricity generation, and so they had to turn on coal plants. Right now, I also heard where Glasgow, a lot of what's being produced there to provide electricity for the environmental conference is from coal plants that they had to turn on because the renewables can't get the job done. We saw that same thing happen in this country last winter in Texas, where people froze to death because the power couldn't be delivered to their homes properly. And again, it's because those policies put in place by the Texas government as well as the U.S. federal government that encourage and pay to have solar and wind projects put up, and they continue to hamper our efforts to provide reliable power. A natural gas plant is reliable 24/7 and 365 days a year, and we just don't understand why that's not accepted, and the policies of this administration are working against us.
So talking about gas price, here in California, we always have higher gas prices, which because of part reason is the state tax. But recently, gas price in every state are going up. So what's going on there?
And again, that's a result of the higher crude oil prices. So, a year ago we had crude oil prices in the $30 to $40 range, something like that. As I said, though, in early 2020, they went actually negative for a while. But now, and I don't know today's number, but it's going to be about $81 a barrel for crude oil. So that translates directly into the refinery runs and what happens at the gas pump in this country. And the difference across, from state to state is going to be how that state applies taxes. There's pretty hefty federal taxes that we all have to pay when we buy a gallon of gas in this country, but then the states will impose taxes. And so the reason Californians pay more for gasoline than any other state is because the state is taxing it higher than others. I'll throw out today, I saw our price here in Tulsa, Oklahoma went to $3.09 a gallon. Yesterday it was $2.94. So we're around the $3 mark. I'm going to assume you guys are probably between $4 and $5. And actually, we've seen some places in California in the last month that have been as high as $6 and $7 a gallon. So it depends on where you are in California. But gasoline is directly related to that, and that's actually another concern when you want to think about the Chinese government and what they're doing. It's projected that sometime probably in 2022, probably early 2022, the Chinese will have more refinery runs than the U.S. And that's simply because they can build refineries there. The government wants them. They want to compete worldwide. And in this country, not only can you not permit a new refinery to be built, it's almost impossible to get permits to upgrade a current refinery that we have in this country. So it's a situation that is it's very complicated worldwide, but those gasoline prices are tied directly to that shortage that I talked about earlier. So, a year ago, we had an oil glut, and gasoline prices were all under $2, I think, almost everywhere in the country. And now we have a shortage, a scarcity, because we stopped producing this. Like I said, we were the number one producer. We've fallen back now because it's not advantageous, and it's hard for our domestic producers to get the funding to go out and drill those wells.
Yeah. So then, regarding the heating cost increase, what would be the impact on the general public in the U.S.?
I think the current price problems that they're seeing, not just gasoline, but when you look at energy prices going up, and this winter, it could be really tough in this country with heating prices. Heating oil prices last year went up 35%, and that might not mean much in California, but most of the New England states, the homes are still heated with heating oil. And so that was a 35% increase. It's probably going to increase another 35 or more percent this winter. That's a lot. That's a huge hunk of change for working families. We did a little estimate that if you increased the price of gasoline, I think this was a few months ago. We didn't know it was going to go up as much as it had. But if you increase the price of gasoline, I think $1.60 a gallon to fill up the most popular vehicle sold in this country, which is a Ford F-150 pickup truck. That's the most popular car sold. If you increase the price $1.60, you added $55 to a tank of gas. So for that person that is working a blue collar job somewhere, trying to keep their family alive, that expense, that extra $55 probably per week or more, is added on top of what they were already paying. So now it's costing you $70 to $80 to fill up your pickup truck so you can go to work. That's huge. That's a huge impact on that family's budget. So we think people are catching on with the rising price. The problems we're seeing and the shortages we're seeing in grocery stores and the inflationary results of what's going on right now really concern us. And it's not necessary. And as I just pointed out, another thing that we're very concerned about, we keep trying to point out to politicians, and I think the people are catching on to this, is that when you do that, when you increase taxes on energy, when you run up the price of energy, it's the working class and the poor amongst us who are hit hardest and first, because a higher percentage of their income goes to those energy costs than it does for the wealthier people in this country.
Yeah, so at this point, probably people are wondering, what is really DEPA, his organization, Domestic Energy Producers Alliance, does, and what do they represent? What do they do in the energy field?
Yeah, the Domestic Energy Producers Alliance, DEPA is what we call it, has been around for about 12 years now. We were formed because we felt like the smaller U.S. domestic oil and gas producer voice was really not being heard in Washington, D.C. On policy issues and regulatory issues by some of the larger trade organizations that are out there, like the American Petroleum Institute, for example. So our organization is made up of oil and gas producers in all the states. We have, I think, 39 collaborating state associations around the country. We have service companies that are involved, royalty owners. A lot of people might not understand how that works. It's a different concept to a lot of people in different parts of the world. But about 3/4 of the mineral estate in this country is owned by individual citizens. So the landowner will actually own the land that they sit on, but they also own the minerals that are underneath them. So if an oil and gas company comes along and drills a well and makes production, then they get paid a royalty for as long as that produces for the rights that were afforded them when they bought the property. So they're also a member of this organization. We have been in Washington, D.C. for 12 years arguing our positions. One of the famous discussions we had in 2015, for example, was the crude oil export ban, and this organization was in front of every single U.S. senator in less than a year, and through the Obama administration, we got that export ban lifted. And so now we're able to export U.S. crude worldwide, and as most people know, up until last year, we became the number one oil producer in the world, as the number one natural gas producer in the world. Since, backslid a little bit, but there we are. And so DEPA is an organization of really kind of grassroots domestic oil and gas producers, service companies, royalty owners, looking out for our interest with policymakers and regulatory folks in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so in terms of energy production, people usually know about those big companies like Chevron, Shell, ExxonMobil, etc. So how's the production capacity or the market share of those smaller or individual companies that DEPA represents in comparing to those big companies?
I don't have an exact number for you, but I believe the last I heard, so this might be a year or so old, that independent producers in this country, so people like my members, drilled 85% of the wells in this country. So they do most of the work in this country. And another, along those same lines, another statistic I'll throw out, one of our collaborating associations is the Kansas Independent Association, and they represent the thousands of producers in the state of Kansas. And the statistic here to understand is that the average well in Kansas produces 2 barrels a day. Okay, so these are not ExxonMobil. these are small family businesses that run. But the other statistics to know about that is that industry in the state of Kansas is number 2 behind agriculture. So it's a little bitty as individuals, but together it's the second leading industry in the state of Kansas.
Yeah, so it really kind of shows how special America is. For example, such huge important industry like the drilling oils are mostly actually in the hands of individual companies.
That's exactly right. And the multinationals that you mentioned, Shell, BP, ExxonMobil, those guys, they're back in this country now, though they left a couple of decades ago for greener pastures around the world where they could produce oil and gas much cheaper than they could here. And when the shale revolution occurred here with horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, now they're back and they have bought assets here and they're becoming U.S. producers again. But still, for the most part, it's the independents that produce most of what's going on here. And another distinction that I'll draw between us and those larger companies, the American Petroleum Institute that represents most of them and its members, a few months ago enacted a policy where they agree with the federal government in carbon pricing. To us, that's a carbon tax, and we disagree with that 100%. We don't believe that's a right thing. It's not right for our industry. It's not right for American citizens and the consumers to have carbon pricing. So and carbon taxes. So that's a distinction that we like to draw between us and those large companies as well.
So what would be the government policy's impact on these individual small companies versus to the big companies?
Yeah, well, that's one of our concerns. And that, again, that's one of the reasons why we oppose any kind of carbon pricing or a carbon tax. As when you start to do that, you impose restrictions and costs on companies that can least afford it. Where when you're talking about, the large multinational companies, they can absorb those costs because they've got other production in other parts of the world that can offset some of those costs for them. So it makes a big difference that the policy impacts here and some of what we've heard in the current reconciliation package with Congress, some of those larger companies don't care, and they'll tell congressmen that that's okay with us if you want to do that, where for us it would harm us. It would harm our smaller producers so that they're going to go out of business and shut those wells down, which again, guess what? That shrinks the supply more and it drives the cost up.
So when I asked Jerry about the fundamental reasons to cause this energy crisis, he has this to say.
I think that there's just in the American psyche, there's something about purchasing gasoline and having cheap, reliable energy sources that if they go up and like they are right now, it's really easy for the blue collar worker in this country to want to blame the oil companies for that rise in price instead of looking at the policies by the government that have created that shortage, that have created the problem in the market, and not the fault of the oil and gas companies.
Right. So, actually, I talk more in depth with Jerry about other issues related to this crisis in the energy. So, because for the sake of time, we'll just stop here for today, and I hope you enjoy the information that Jerry Simmons has to provide. And so thank you for being with me, and thank you for all the comments. So take care, and we know the government policies really could impact a lot on our everyday life. So, but more information, especially those information from the people in the field, would really help us to understand better, and hopefully we will, it also will equip us to know what to do in the future. All right, that's it for now. Thank you again for watching, and take care. See you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.